Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This time I'm going to be showing you guys the editing side of using the EOS M with Magic Lantern. I want to show you guys how to go from something like this to this. Okay guys, so first off, once you have your recording and you're going to start using it and you're going to edit with it, you have to start off in what I'm going to guess is going to be MLV App. This app is reasonably useful. It has all of these kinds of settings on the right side, very similar to Lightroom for color grading or color correcting. And doing this kind of stuff, sharpening, some noise reduction, and loads of other things. I never use any of this, actually. I go up to here and I'm going to change it to the codec to the Cinema DNGs and use the DaVinci Resolve naming scheme, and I'm going to make sure audio is exported. This is the way that I would do it. This is the way I would recommend you guys do it. And then I would export the clips, select all the clips I was going to export, select this. It'll come up with a dialog asking where, select the file where I want them exported, hit export. It'll take so much time. This program does have the ability to export in quite a huge amount of codecs. Just be also aware that using the Cinema DNG uncompressed will be the fastest way to export because it's not compressing it. If you pick something like even the ProRes 4x4, the export time will be a lot longer because it has to calculate and compress the footage. So if you're not worried about space for your video project, I would recommend using the Cinema DNGs. That's also so that when you go to a program like I'm going to be using DaVinci Resolve, you'll have as much information as possible going into your color tab, than limiting yourself right out of the gate by compressing the footage before you even get to your editor. So let's go over to the editor and take a look at what we're going to be doing. Alright, so now that we have our files, we're going to be taking them into DaVinci. So in the background, I have a project all set up and ready to go. And here is an example of the files that you'll be getting out. It'll look like this. This is a single video clip, the one that we'll be using today. It'll be a folder, and inside that folder, a crap ton of .dng files, which are every single one of these is a single frame of your video as a raw photograph. And then at the very bottom is a single audio file, and that's the audio for the clip. So all we're going to do, because this is where the confusion comes, whether you drag all of these in or this, what you want to do is just drag the folder itself into DaVinci, and there is our file right there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to set up a basic timeline. This one, as you can see in the background, this was shot in 4x3 because I was shooting with an anamorphic lens. So let me stretch it 960, set to the 23.4, 23.976, create our new timeline. Bam, we have our new timeline. What we're going to do is just drag that sucker in. We're going to untag that, go to, select, bam, now we have our footage in. We're going to go down a little bit to right about there. Now that you have your footage in, let's assume that you've gone through the process of assembling your video, and now you're going to be sat down to color grade. So we're going to go over to our color tab. I'm going to assume you recognize a lot of this from your nodes and everything, and you understand your scopes and all that jazz. Well, normally when you have a video clip, you start here in your color wheels and you might do basic edits and stuff like that, or you'll go to your curves and do basic edits. But because we're using raw files, the camera raw tab now becomes available to us. What can we do with this? Well, if you do the decoding option, we can set it to clip. When we do that, we get a whole lot more options that we can do. And this is by using, so that we're telling it clip by clip, this is how I want it to be understood, the raw footage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the white balance as shot, but it gives you a lot of these options. The white balance is actually just about identical to daylight that I shot at. Then you have these two options here. Now this is where it's going to vary between person to person, but I personally will change the color space to the Black Magic design, which automatically changes the gamma space to also the Black Magic design film. Then you're going to turn on highlight recovery. Often, I mean, in this clip it doesn't help us any because there was nothing over, so it doesn't matter. But if there's some information that went over, this can help you out and try and recover some of that. So now the footage kind of looks like this. It's a little bit underexposed and desaturated, kind of like log. Well, what we're going to do is use the color space transform on the first node. We're going to use this because the idea is that from the raw video, we're going to try and retain as much information to this point. So using the Black Magic design color space and gamma space to retain as much information as possible instead of using like Rec 709 and gamma 2.4, which would be like the most normal basic codec or color space and gamma. We're using the Black Magic, which retains more of that information. We're going to tell it that our so color space transform, what that does is exactly what you would think it does. It changes your color space and gamma from whatever it is to whatever you want it to be. So what we're going to be using it for is to change the Black Magic design to Arri Alexa and log C. Why do we do that? Well, we do that because I like using Arri log C the most. I like how it rolls off and it gives it already a more filmic look, but you have all these other options if you choose to. So you have Panasonic V-Log, you have Fujifilm F-Log, you have Red logs, and you have Sony logs. So you can choose any one of those you like, or you could just straight edit to Rec 709. That's your choice. Sometimes you can use the tone mapping if you need to, or gamut mapping. For this one, we're going to ignore those and just go back to the editing. So now we have ourselves primed and ready to go. So this is usually where I'd start off. You have a couple options from here. You can either edit it from the log profile that we have right now, or you can put a LUT on it. If you want to put a LUT on it, you can just grab the basic Arri Alexa log C to Rec 709 that is built into DaVinci, and this is what it's going to look like. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. If you don't really know what you're doing, or if you're not very confident with your editing skills, it's not bad. If you want to just do that, I would create a node to correct for this. If you want to correct for your light and stuff, you create a node before it. And then you can go into like the primaries wheels, say, and just bring it up a bit, just a tad, to try and help it out a little bit. But the Rec 709 limits you a lot, so that's not what I do personally. The next thing I'll do is usually go into the log and give myself a basic contrast adjust to where I want it to be. For this footage in particular, what I've been doing is pushing the midtones up and then using log to control my shadows just a bit. Okay, so I messed up. What I actually used was the red log film in my test. This time, just to see what it would look like, and this is roughly what it would look like if I were to use a LUT to get myself in the ballpark of where I want to be. This is what I would do. Sometimes I'll use LUTs, but it's not very often that I'll use a LUT, and this kind of gets me in the ballpark of where I want to be if I want to do a quick edit and not spend too much time on it. But this isn't a color grading tutorial. This is just a tutorial to get you started with editing your footage. One thing you have to pay attention to as well when you're editing is that if we take a look at what the raw would look like without editing it, at all, say changing it to the log format, this is what it'll look like. If we skip down to this point, this is the thing that makes me choose the log formats, is if we zoom in to 100% and take a look at the shadows, you can see that there's some crap going on in here. You can also see that if we try and bump the shadows, we reveal a lot of noise. But if we take that and we turn it into the Black Magic, it starts to disappear. That off color that occurs starts to disappear, especially when we also slap on our transformation to turn this into something like the Arri Alexa log C. So now we have that. Let's say we just go ahead and put our favorite LUT on with a basic transformation behind it. So I've lit the footage up a little bit. That noise looks considerably lower, less noticeable, because of how the log works, and that's also pushing the footage quite a bit. If you owned the program, you could do a lot better with using the noise reduction. I do not own it though, so I cannot do that myself, but I would highly recommend, if you had the money, to go out or to buy it so that you can use some noise reduction in your footage to make it look even better. But that's a basic starting point for you guys when you're editing your footage. And this is the way that I do it, and this is the way that I would recommend. Don't limit yourselves to Rec 709, and don't, unless you have to because of space issues, don't limit yourselves to using a compressed video format. Go ahead and use those Cinema Raw DNGs and get the best that you can in your grading, especially if you're somebody who's experienced with like log footage from a Sony or a Panasonic or whatever variety of log footage. If you're experienced, use these tools. Go from the raw DNG with color space transform to your log format, as opposed to using MLV app to get to your log format, which is something it also does. You can convert to a log format there, but I would highly not recommend doing that. I hope this has helped somebody out. And I hope that you guys have a fantastic day. I'll see you guys next time.